Ben Schwartz and Thomas Middleditch, thanks for coming on the show. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Great.
Everything is good.
Yeah, nothing to complain about globally or locally.
I really loved watching the special. For people who haven't seen it, Ben, can you just set it up for us? It's essentially an improv show on stage filmed, right? You come out and you get suggestions from the audience.
I'll take it from here. You're going to love this. Watch this.
Ben, handle this.
Yeah, we do something called long form improv. What we do, we have 3 specials on Netflix. It's called Middleditch and Schwartz. And the whole idea is we talk to an audience member about something they're looking forward to or dreading. And we have a conversation with that person or group of people for a little bit. And that becomes like the kernel, the seed, if you will, to do an entire 50-minute long show, all following one narrative where Thomas and I will play many characters and basically like give you a fun little stage show.
Is there something you're hoping for? Is there something you're hoping that they're going to say?
We're hoping they cry so hard out of respect and laughter that their body shrivels up because all the water weight is gone out of their bodies. We're looking for everybody to look like Hans Moleman at the end of our shows.
Yes. The desired reaction is death by sudden dehydration.
I mean, but is there like, I think when I was watching I felt a change in energy from when you first went out and you're waiting for the suggestion to when you actually get it and you start improvising. What does that feel like in that moment when you're waiting for what the night is going to be based on? What does that feel like?
I think the first, I mean, we also like we probably remove a good chunk of the opening sequence compared to what you see to what we film, just because there's a lot of get to know you with us and the audience, a lot of crowd work, as they say in the biz, and we're having to establish this relationship and also kind of ask something, hopefully not too personal, but some kind of nugget from their actual lives. And I think it's very inquisitive. It's very like, okay, let's just get to know each other. Let's get to know this one person who's talking so we can gain as much information as we feel that is relevant and will help propel the show. It's not like a direct recreation of their world. It's our filtered interpretation. And then once we're off and running, it's like, okay, now let's see what we remembered and use of all the goodies that they gave us.
Yeah, I guess that's what I really loved, is that obviously when the improvisation starts based on what they said, it's so confident. Like you've done this for so long, you have such a background in it. You have every idea how to do it. But some of my favorite moments were just waiting to find out what you were going to say and kind of watching you guys while you took it in. And I can't imagine that sort of like, geez, I hope they give me something good to work with here. Or does that even occur to you?
You're talking about just for the opening part?
For the suggestion.
Yeah,
like the suggestion.
I'm curious as to how it feels when you're waiting for that suggestion. Like, is there a world where you get something and you go, Jesus, this is being filmed. I don't know what we can do.
So like we've only filmed 4 shows out of the hundreds of shows that we've done, but these ones for Netflix. And so, but there are times when we'll get a suggestion that someone's talking and either they're trying to be funny, like really hard to be funny and trying to like be their friends and say weird, dirty jokes and it doesn't work, or people aren't being truthful. We've always found that the best version is when we ask a question and people are really truthful and they have, specifics about the things they want to talk about and stuff like that. Because if you give us specifics, we can really get on stage and play with them. So like that first one with the wedding was like such a beautiful gift because it was a third party member talking about a wedding that he was attending. It wasn't even his wedding, but the wedding people were next to him. So all that stuff is like great. And you could see like the thing that Thomas and I have gotten pretty good at is while we're interviewing someone, we can keep asking questions to keep diving deeper to be like, hey, maybe this isn't what the story is. Maybe it's this. And we'll find different aspects of it. But some of them just off the bat, you're like, oh, this is great. Let's do it.
Thomas, does it ever change it when it's being filmed for Netflix? Like typically when you go to see an improv show, you're kind of there in that moment. And you say that off the top of episode 1. You say, hey, this isn't, I know we typically have this experience and then we all just go home. Did it change things between you and Ben? Did it change the energy on stage knowing that this was being recorded?
I think it just adds a a whole lot more pressure. I mean, luckily Ben and I we like to be in the clutch situations. That's fun for us, and seeing if we'll make it or not. But like, not only was it a summation of over 20 years each of doing improv. I'm doing improv since 8th grade. So it's like this is your like verdict on your career as a comedian. But also it's kind of, if we tanked it, it would be yet another piece of evidence in the case against filming improv for specials. And so it just sort of felt like, boy, we really gotta like nail this. And that is a tight position to come into a show where you just have to make everything up. But I think we made it through.
But yeah, and I think it really worked in a way that like improv specials I've seen on television before haven't. And I think this is something that maybe I can say more than you. But I remember watching like the Improv Olympic on television, and it never really quite working. But I also remember watching Whose Line and it kind of working. Like, you're right, Ben. It can be challenging to have improv on television and make it work, but it really feels like whatever decisions you made here really did work out.
Yeah, I think the things that we try to do to translate it. First of all, Thomas is right. We think about the hundreds of shows we've done, and none of them mean anything. It's not like stand-up where you can work on the same pieces of material over and over again, and then when you're prepared with those material, you go out with it. It's whatever happens in those shows that we record, that's what the show is. We can't really erase a huge chunk of it. Let's say a joke doesn't work in a stand-up routine. You can kind of remove that, but for improv, we can't remove a big chunk because we're telling a full story and then the story wouldn't make sense. So there is, the pressure is from that. But I think because we were doing it for camera, the thing that we were really trying to do is cover ourselves. We got 9 cameras. We covered the hell out of this thing. So, every scene can be captured in a cinematic way and we can be expressed in a cinematic way. So I think that was one of the things that we tried to do in pushing the form a bit.
And also,
I can't imagine
there's
the level
lots of different ways to do long form improv. Oh, sorry. Would you rather?
No, please.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. There's
so many Canadians apologizing to each other right now. It's incredible.
There's lots of different ways to do long form improv, right? Like, that's just sort of a genre, and you can have it with like 8 people. You can have it with 2 people like we do. You could sort of like center it around a musical or a Shakespeare or whatever the heck you want. We sort of didn't create and then do what we did. We just sort of did this a lot, and then this was what the product was. So and it sort of ends up being like we wanted to remove a lot of barriers that would require you to know improv, either lingo or improv like moves. Like, we don't have anyone saying, okay, freeze, and then like someone tagging anyone out or anything, or like sweep edits or any of these things that are involved in a lot of improv shows. We just wanted to be like 2 people on stage making up a show, and that to have it almost resemble like just like a vaudeville act, like just a 2-person comedy act, as opposed to like, improv, like, sipping on a fine wine of improv coaching or something like that.
Right. I can't imagine the level of trust it takes between 2 people to be able to kind of trust one another to do a show like this for so long. Ben, is that something that happens immediately, or is that something that has to grow, or do you kind of know when you meet Thomas, like, I think I can do something here?
I think the thing that starts with it is like a respect for each other. I had seen Thomas perform. He came from Chicago. He did a show named Baby Wants Candy, and he was just extraordinary. It's so funny. And then I saw him in other things, and I think he had seen me a couple of times, and we both thought each other were funny. So that's how it starts. And then we perform on stage a couple of times, and we find out we're funny together, whether it's in a group of 6 and we're doing 2-person scenes in that, and it starts to really hit, and it's easy. And then the level of trust keeps growing and growing with each show. And then when we're doing 2-person shows, it's you have to trust the person with everything you have, because it's just you 2 up there. If something goes wrong, it's just, you have to always have each other's backs. So it grows and grows and grows. And the more we did those 2-person shows at Largo, the more Thomas was like, we got to, let's get out there and tour. And then, then we slowly went from that to touring to, we visited Toronto, we did Vancouver twice. And so then it was trying to sell a special, which was very, very difficult to do, but we're happy that Netflix eventually said, yeah.
Thomas, you said you've been doing improv since you were 8 years old. I know you're from Nelson, BC. How was doing improv in Canada?
Well, like maybe some of your viewers and listeners know, there's like In Canada, we've got something called theater sports, which is basically short form improv games put into, well, I guess the lower rungs of it are for schools, so you can get a team and you can compete, and it's a great way to get just some of the basics. I mean, you're doing games, you're doing Whose Line Is That Anyway type short form games, and that was, I mean, to have access to that in 8th grade in a small little, well, Nelson's a pretty artsy town. We had like lots of like community theater and school theater and all that kind of stuff. But to have access to that, I feel in hindsight very, very fortunate. We weren't, I don't think Nelson, BC was a contender for the nationals. We made it to provincials once and got beat, which is, I think is really, it's also it's a funny thing to like compete and win and lose at improv, but you know, I think it helps get kids like interested in the competitive thing, but yeah.
But I feel like a lot of improv comics, once they kind of graduate to film and television, and I use graduate loosely, I don't see them often going back. I see some of them going back, but I don't often see them going back. And obviously, we both know you from a lot of different roles. Ben, like, what is it that keeps you going back to improv?
I love it, man. I loved it at the beginning when I was an intern at UCB for free classes, doing the garbage, doing the recycling. Like, I loved it, and I love the idea of getting out on stage with absolutely nothing and creating something and making a big group of people laugh. That's like that live performance aspect of it I still love. But you are right. Once people kind of get in movies and TV, you see that they stop. And by the way, it could be that, you know, maybe they just don't have a time at 9 p.m. on a Sunday to keep doing a show or something like that. You know, maybe they have families or something like that. But for Thomas and I also think it's also, if you look at the structure of what improv is, there aren't many examples of, you know, touring big venues and then doing a special. So unlike stand-up, where you'll see, you know, you could see the goals afterwards, where you could see like Kevin Hart tour, then tour huge places, then arenas, then have specials. Improv kind of stopped with those 120-person theaters, and they call it a black box theater here, and that's kind of like where it ended. So, you know, we didn't make money doing improv for up until 2 years ago or something like that. So I understand why there's drop-off, stuff like that, but both of us loved it so much. And we love the idea of growing it out a little bit more and seeing how far we could stretch it out. That's why these specials were a huge deal for us.
Thomas, when you say seeing how far we can stretch it out, what do you mean by that?
I think as Ben was talking about, like, improv for so many years, and this is partly why people drop out of it, is it is just a thing that you see on a random night for $5 or $10 or something. Just it's like a little act, and it will always be a little act. And when we say break out of it, it was a very like consciously thought of thing of how are we gonna like take this to a next level? Is it possible? Because, you know, you get told, you believe the story that everybody tells themselves and the improv community tells themselves of like, for some reason there's this thing of like, well, don't reach too high, you know, because it's impossible. And so we set out a goal of like, no, we're going to tour and we're going to try and do big theaters. We're going to do Carnegie Hall, Chicago Theater, Ryman, and all kinds of other things. And I think, you know, if we want to be analytical about it, part of our success in that department had something to do with us being, you know, in film and TV. I think if we were even at the same level of improvisers, but like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it'd be different, obviously. Mm-hmm. But how are you going to take it out of this stigma of just being like a tiny little thing? And with anything creatively, you just got to prove it to people. It's all talk until you either do or don't do it. So I don't know, but I don't mean to, I hope you're not coming across as like in any way egotistical or arrogant. It's just something that feels very, I think Ben and I are just proud that we set out this goal, and it was really hard, and we kind of did it in some way. I'm not going to plant the flag and say victory. I think that's maybe a little unbecoming, but it just feels good to.
Now you did it. You won.
Yeah.
You won. Win. It's like theater sports again. They won.
Yeah, we wanted to win. But we just wanted to break free of, I think, this sort of like self-imposed stigma, because even improvisers will believe in that. And it's so self-defeatist. We don't need to.
Yeah, but like, it doesn't sound arrogant. It just sounds like you really love it. Like it sounds like you really love it and you believe in it and you want other people to love it and believe in it too. You know.
That's very true. And Ben said
that's very true.
When you ask like why do it, it's because we love it. Unless my brain has turned to mush, I will do improv, and I think we both genuinely believe in it as a medium to deliver comedy, that it should be at a higher level if it deserves to. I mean, I want to like make sure no one feels entitled that they just get to, but like if you can prove that you can get there, you deserve it.
Ben, does it help you in other parts of your life? Like I know you're doing this Space Force show, and I know you first from Parks and Rec. Does it help you in other parts when you're doing more scripted work?
I think so, very much. It helps me a lot in writing too. It helps you with writing dialogue. It helps you with writing structure, and vice versa. From writing a lot of scripts and writing a lot of movies in my time, when we're doing a show, Thomas and I have a pretty good grasp of what the 3-act structure of a movie feels like. And we're able to play with the show and see how much time we have to kind of play the narrative all the way through. And in terms of acting, I think it's huge help, because if you really boil down to what improv is, it's scene work, it's listening and responding, which I think, is basically what acting is. And so you're able to get in that moment a bit more. You're able to live in that moment a bit more. And even though Thomas and I, when we're in scenes, we could probably play maybe more than someone who doesn't do improv. It doesn't matter. The idea of being able to just be in that scene, really be in it, really be actively listening and responding to someone makes the scene, I think, makes the scene work feel a little bit more alive and stuff like that.
Does it ever go the other way, Thomas? Does it ever feel, and you can answer this as sort of however you want, but does it ever feel frustrating or limiting if you're in a scene with someone who doesn't have that background and you're trying to do comedy with them?
I think an earlier version of myself would have said yes, but my opinion on like, well, it just depends on what your goals are, because improvising or riffing, ad-libbing, for camera is just a different thing. Unless you're in a real sort of like, I won't say I'll say a testicles out comedy, like Step Brothers. Step Brothers, you've got
thank you,
all those
thank you, Thomas.
greats,
thank you for remembering the CBC. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it works perfect.
You got these like titans that are just like sparring, and you want to have everything rolling and just like, okay, go. Make sure you get the scene, so we have that, and then let's spend half an hour trying to come up with funnier stuff. That's like a totally different environment than,
testicles in.
Than testicles in comedy, where you're using improv as like a little additive, some kind of moment or a flourish within a scene or on a character, and it's not like, oh, let's totally derail it. So no, I don't need everyone to have a ton of improv training. In fact, sometimes when someone's like pretty enthusiastic about improvising, it's like a little exhausting, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Does it ever get confusing for your audience? How do I put this again in a better way? Like, are there moments where they can't remove you from your characters? Are there moments where you're trying to do improv and they're calling out Jean-Ralphio or they're calling out Richard or something like that?
I think it only happens at the beginning of a show. Maybe someone, it won't be separating us, but like when we get out in the beginning of the show, what you don't really see in this, but we did in the specials, but we cut out because we want to keep them under an hour, is the first 10, 12 minutes of us on stage is Thomas and I just talking to each other, talking to the audience, doing bits. And because we're doing that thing, which Thomas explained, and also I think like Jim Carrey had a great line where he talks about like the audience wants to feel comfortable. Like they want to look on stage and feel comfortable. And we're about to do this thing. We're making up everything. So us talking to that audience at the beginning is getting them comfortable with us and being like, hey, this is going to be fun. Let's just enjoy it. You know what I mean? But like that moment, because we're kind of making fun of each other, sometimes someone will say something or, we'll make a joke about something we've done in the past. But then when it comes to the show, never. It's off to the races, because also when it comes to the show, we tell the people that's it. There's no more audience participation. We're going to take it from here. And people are so cool and down with it. They're like, cool, go for it. And then they let us escape into our weird, crazy world where Thomas is three wizards creating peanut M&Ms while I'm the inside of peanut M&M. Hashtag peanut M&M, hashtag ad, I guess.
Yeah, you're getting paid by peanut M&Ms in this. You're just gonna, that makes sense. You're trying to get all the money you possibly can. You're an influencer.
We gotta find a way to make money, man. This is the time.
Yeah, Sunday
Canada,
nights on the CBC
are
the best time to try and make money for your ads. It's a really great idea.
That's what I'm saying. Of course, hashtag buy a tote bag, hashtag donate. You know what I mean?
Thomas, I think a lot about improvising in terms of music, and when I was watching your special, I thought about this too. Is that it seems like a great ability to be present. And I know that like mindfulness and being in the moment is something that's sort of talked a lot about right now. And it's a bit woo-woo, to be honest, sometimes. But I can only imagine that it must help you in other parts of your life, that ability to be so present with Ben and ignore everything else that's going on in your life in order to be able to do that work.
Man, it's very perceptive. And I would say that I wish I could apply that crystallized moment of being in the moment to other elements of my life more often. It's actually part of why improv is so important to me. Is I think a lot of artists struggle with personal or sort of life around them, and often when I am sort of really kind of feeling quite down, I will get to a show with Ben in particular, and that ability to just be on stage and just do that. That's your job, is be the character in that moment, react, listen. You are, as Ben said, one of three wizards trying to communicate with Ben inside a peanut M&M, hashtag peanut M&Ms, hashtag ad. That is your only responsibility, right? And all the fights that you had that day, or anything that Trump said on Twitter, or any of that stuff, it just melts. And it kind of is the most active form of meditation. And I wish I could like be a guru in that in other life, because it would all be a bit easier. But that very thing is kind of why it sort of feels like it needs to be done, and why both Ben and I are a little kind of like anxious and sort of a little maybe sad right now that we just can't go do it. We can't go on stage and do it right now, and that's a bummer. Can't wait to be given the green light, or a green M&M, hashtag green M&Ms, hashtag at.
Hashtag Canada, hashtag
yeah, Ben. When Thomas says that all that anxiety and stress just melts like in your mouth, not in your hand, hashtag peanut M&M, hashtag ad.
He's back, baby. He's in it, baby.
We're doing it. We're rolling in it. Rolling that
cut in on the special.
Big candy,
baby.
But Ben, has it helped your life outside of comedy as well? Like, does it impact other parts of your life? Has it helped you?
The idea of performing improv?
Yeah, like that stuff. The what you get from improv that you can apply to other parts in your life.
Well, there's if we want to get into this, which Thomas and I we can get into this. We have the idea of what yes and means. And I know this is a bit nerdy, and I mean we don't hold it like
which is the number one theory of improv. Sorry, I don't know if that.
Yes,
was it.
Yeah. So the idea is that, let's say you start with an initiation of anything. Thomas, say any sentence real quick.
I like turtles.
So if he says I like turtles, and if I said,
viral internet video.
Oh, I haven't seen it. So if he says I like turtles, and if I said no to the idea, and I said no, you don't, you hate them, then we've stopped the scene before it starts. But if he says I like turtles, and I'm be like, oh my God, I like turtles too, because one time I had a turtle when I was 5, and then I go into that. Then we've added it, and we're building something together. And the whole idea of yes and is that together you can create something and build. If you say yes to things in life as opposed to shutting them down and saying no, there's a version of that. We don't hold it up like a scripture, but I do enjoy the idea that I will say the thing that Thomas said that is most true. The only thing that Thomas has said that is true. No. The thing that Thomas said that I really agree with is we will have some stuff going on business-wise where we're like, oh, I don't know about, this aspect of this industry. The second we get out on stage, we just get it all out. Not to say that we're shitting on the things. We just get out any anxiety. When we're performing, we're just in this space that is exactly what he said. It is that form of meditation where it doesn't matter what just happened. It's like we're just getting to escape everything and be there for a moment and make people laugh and get fueled off the idea that all these people are like, we're enjoying something in the room together. So there is that. But in terms of life stuff, outside of the idea of both him and I probably being pretty quick when we're talking to human beings in general, just because we've worked that muscle out quite a bit, the idea of yes and is something that improvisers like to talk about, the idea of saying yes to things and building upon it, as opposed to crushing down ideas left and right.
Yeah, what a way to live your life, you know? Like, what a way to live your life if someone says anything to saying yes and then adding to it, as opposed to just shutting it down, you know?
It's the premise of many a studio comedy, I believe. What if we just
I really thought you were going to go.
Yes?
No, not really.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's terrible.
It's got me in jail 5 times.
Can I tell you one thing that truly the improv has taught me most about anything in real life is that no matter what type of show I do, I know if I put that beautiful milk chocolate candy inside of my mouth and really chew it out and get that peanut center, I know what love is. I know what the feeling of like,
whoa.
Oh, it's like I'm not whole until I eat that peanut milk chocolate treat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Listen, I think here in Canada, we've learned a lot about, you know, American healthcare system. We've learned a lot about how we interact with one another by watching you guys. And overall, I think the thing we've learned the most is that you really can't beat the sweet taste of a peanut M&M at the end of the day, you know?
You know
and
what?
Please, can I just have some money?
Might have a shot at it? You know what might have a shot at it? Smarties. Hashtag Smarties. Hashtag ad. Hashtag jumping ship. I'm a Smarties man. Smarties!
Hashtag Smarties. Now you're the one for us. Hashtag we hate M&Ms.
Hashtag I'm a Smartie. You're the dummy.
Guys, thanks so much. Later on, take care.
All right.
Hey, man, wait, no. You said you were going to yodel at the end of this interview, and you said you're very good at it. You've got to do it. For the audience, you've got to do it.
For the crowd.
All right.
The crowd right now. What are you preparing? What do you need to yodel?
He's got a banjo.
I got a banjo.
Hell yeah, baby.
This is after Thomas left Canada. This was all that was left to give TV shows to. They were like, well, everyone good is gone. Everyone good has gone to the States. Is there anyone who can play the banjo or something? So they're paying me like an eighth of what Ed Helms gets, and I get to do this. So it's great, you know.
Do it.
I can't wait. Let's hear it. I cannot wait. For real. I'm sincerely
I don't know if I can yodel
interested.
in. I don't know if I can yodel in E and G. I got a feeling called the blues. Oh Lord, since my baby said goodbye. Lord, I don't know what I'll do. All I do is sit and sigh. Oh Lord, that's all you're getting.
Yeah, man.
Oh.
That's all the yodeling you're getting.
Oh.
Suck it, Walmart yodeling kid. You're nothing.
You're out. Also, if you want to work at the CBC, please give me a call.
Yeah.
Great.
Are you giving green lights to shows?
Oh yeah, man. I guess that's what I do. That's my main job.
Okay, I got a couple of good ideas.
Do you have a show idea for
Coming
Thomas?
back to Canada, kids. Huh?
I can't wait to hear Thomas's show. We'll discuss your show idea later.
I can't wait to hear your Canadian
it's
show
off air.
idea. Is it The Littlest Hobo?
Well, I want to. No. Well, do you know what
Don't
shows
say
I
it
really
now.
liked as a kid? I really liked growing up. I really liked Street Sense, and I really liked Jonavision. And I thought it was so interesting that CBC, if you think about it, that they had consumer awareness programming for teens. Like that kind of thing just doesn't happen in America. That is not a thing that happens down here. Like that's beautiful.
No, I remember watching American TV, and there was like how to get in credit card debt for teens. I remember that very well.
Oh, is there a critter happening? Ben, is that the dogs?
There's three wolves in my house right now. They heard the yodeling and they started coming after us.
Run!
Yeah, they started coming out of the woodwork.
Just crashed through the window. They're looking for you.
Yeah,
and
they
your
used to
banjo.
do. I remember there was a Street Sense. There was a Street Sense thing about how there was too much air in the bags of chips.
In the bag of
Like,
chips.
are we paying mainly for air?
Yeah, and they'd play tennis with the bags. It was great.
Ben, you missed out.
Just Ben.
I think I got it.
And then in
You know,
between, like
having
you would
every-
have, you could have a consumer awareness show, then you would have like a teen talk show just for teens, and then in between you'd have like heritage moments where you learned about guy who invented the hockey mask or the little black flies, little black flies. Oh, it's a black fly no matter where you go. I'll die with a black fly, making my bowl in North Ontario, Ohio, in North Ontario. That'll work great with the audio delay. That's perfect.
That's great. Guys, thanks so much. I
happy
really
we
love the
kept
special.
going.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
man. Thanks
Oh.
so much for doing this. Those
And
were
the
great
director-
questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've always liked hanging out with improvisers because I find them always very welcoming. Like they're never going to. I remember hanging out with one guy one time who was an improviser in Toronto. He used to teach at Second City, and I really like because I feel like he always would never like if there was someone there who didn't know anybody, he'd always kind of seek them out and make sure they felt included and all that. I don't know. Like I've always been very
great.
curious about it, but I didn't want to get too
It's a
like
team
what
sport.
is a herald with you.
It is a team sport. That Thomas is right. It's all about teamwork. It's all about making the other person look good. Like when you started yodeling playing banjo, you will never see Thomas and I smile more than that because you yes-handed the first thing we said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll guess and got a yodeling. I don't care. You should watch Julie yodeling. Though.
Of course. Of course.
All right, Jane. By the way, John Thomas before Jane, who's directing this, worked on Jonavision.
Oh,
Oh,
excellent. Well, Jane, you did a great job. Jonavision was like really one of my favorite shows. Loved it.
Right, guys. Thanks so much. Take care.